Brace yourselves for mediocrity, because today we're discussing a Netflix original movie. Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown embark on a quest in a world where robots are fighting for the right to live. This is The Electric State. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast, and we are here today, this week, for a new release, a Netflix movie. Aww, this is a new film by the Russo brothers, who did two Avengers movies and two Captain America movies, and something called The Grey Man, I believe, after that yes. I never saw. But they're back with a Netflix.
That was a spy one? Was that a spy movie?
I don't know. It may have been. It was definitely an action movie. I think it was Chris Evans that was in it. But this is based on a book. I want to say Simon Kinberg's the name of the author. And I believe that this is a science fiction author whose work is typically, has a very specific tone to it that whenever it's been attempted to be translated has maybe not quite worked out very well. So I know fans of his work were kind of concerned by this. I wasn't familiar with it really. So, I was getting a fairly open book. However, I did see the trailer a little bit ago, right? For The Electric State, which is what we're talking about here. And, it looked like a pretty, it's like a generic movie. Chris Pratt's there.
I absolutely came to the conclusion of when I was watching this is that Chris Pratt's inclusion in anything is a studio saying, we love the concept, but we don't think it's going to hit enough of an audience. So Chris Pratt's here.
Yeah, we'll get into everything. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps us out a bunch, and you can get bonus shows from us over on Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So the basic premise of The Electric State is that it's kind of like one of these, it's a slightly alternate version of history, although I would debate why it needs to be set in the 90s anyway, because it doesn't really use that for anything. But
I could tell you exactly why, but we'll get to it.
But technically we're in the 90s, but forgetting the time period that we're supposed to be in, robots exist. Robots were made and they fulfill a number of basic tasks. But one day, and this is all backstory in the movie, this is not spoiler stuff, they rise up, they revolt, and there's a war. There's a war between humans and robots because robots want their freedom and want to be treated as an equal class. And the movie's set after the war, and we follow Michelle, played by Millie Bobby Brown, who is the main character of the movie, who lost all of her family during the war. And she ends up being encountered by a robot, which is notable because robots are heavily illegal to even exist. All of the robots that do exist are all inside a big concentration camp in the middle of the country.
I was going to say, the humans very clearly won the war, and they just put all the robots out in the desert.
So, I mean, here's the thing. See, as it was doing some of this stuff early on and explaining the backstory, I'm like, obviously, right, science fiction, one of the cornerstones of the entire genre is that you can use robots or aliens or whatever it might be as a stand-in so that you can talk about some very real, very serious subjects. And it's even okay when that's pretty on the nose. Sometimes someone like a Paul Verhoeven screams his subtext at you, and it's fine because it's kind of this abrasive thing that feels like he's punching you in the gut. And then sometimes it just feels like you're not trying very hard. Sometimes it feels like you're just... it's like you're going through the motions. You're doing the things that you expected of a science fiction movie, but it feels just a little bit, for example, when a robot in this movie has the line, and I'm just cherry picking from a random point in the middle here. When a robot in this movie has the line, "We don't all know each other," it's hard not to just feel like the the subtext, if you want to call it that, is a little half-assed and just feels like it's going through the motions. To give you a sense of just how sort of generic and blockbuster 101 this movie is, not only do we have Chris Pratt, who, is become a bit of a punching bag for movies in the last few years, just because he's kind of the height of this kind of generic whatever. But there's a lot of song choices in this movie, but there's two in particular that stood out to me. One is when it started playing Don't Stop Believing, and I thought, this felt a bit like, a bit tropey 10 years ago, and so we're using that again. And the movie, again, not spoiling any plot or context or anything, the movie ends with Wonderwall, which is like the 90s version of, here's the popular song that everyone's overused 100 million times. So, I don't know, like, it feels like such an easy thing to say at this point, and it's a lazy critique, it really is. So I do really want to emphasize that I don't like saying this. But when you say to me, could you like give me a movie that feels like it was written by AI? This is what I would hand you, because it follows the 3-act structure to a T. It follows tropes, and it uses song choices. It has the quippy, like, did that just happen kind of joke dialogue.
The that just happened lines in this, I was gonna gouge out my eyes.
It's just, and yeah, okay. David, what did you think of the Electric State?
Well, there was one thing I wanted to chime on there with the end of you going through all that. You were listing off, it feels like this, it feels like that. And the only thing I want to say is, yes, Pete, I have watched a Netflix original movie before. I'm aware.
It's such a Netflix original movie.
Yeah. No, I
Hashtag content. It is content.
Yeah, hashtag content. Honestly, that's the thing, is that from the word go, I felt like this was going to be a boring movie. I felt like, going into this, our initial scene, before we even get any of the robot stuff, is this kid taking a test, and then we introduce to Millie Bobby Brown, who's this kid's sister, and they go on this whole long thing about, like, you're like the smartest brother ever. You can do you're going to change the world.
To be fair, I want to point out, she's not the kid sister to him. She's the older sister, because there's a line specifically about him going to college before her, which I took to mean, she should be going first because she's older.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, you want to base a movie around the relationship that two siblings have? Absolutely fine, right? You want to say they were close? That's also fine, right? And I say this as an only child who has no point of reference for any of this. But the relationship that these two have in this movie, every time we get scenes of it, is so sickeningly sweet that it's unrealistic to, like, siblings are not this unrelentingly nice to each other, even if they do like each other.
Yeah, like they have one or two moments in this initial scene where they do a tiny little bit of a jab at each other, but it's so light, and then is immediately followed up by like, I'm just kidding. You're my favorite person. We're the best. You better come to visit every other day.
And oh my god! And if you're trying to tell me that they're more bonded because they've got really crappy parents, so big sisters became this kind of parental figure to them, then that's fine. But you have to show me the shitty parents at some point in the movie to tell me that.
Yeah, it's again, from, like I was saying, from the word go, I immediately got the vibe that this is just going to be a by the numbers. We know exactly what we're getting out of this, and I didn't expect there to be any sort of major changes that were going to be an interesting plot. The most I was hoping for, once we started getting the backstory on the robots, is that they would have some distinct and interesting visuals that really would have made this worthwhile just from a world setting perspective. But by the time we're done with it, one of our lead characters is Mr. Peanut. This movie just felt like corporatized trash the whole way through. Whatever original charm was in this book, in terms of like, this retro futuristic, where like all the robots kind of have like a strange 50s aesthetic to them because of when robots first started production, but at the same time they're modern robots. So it's there, it's interesting, but it is pushed so far into the background and sanitized of any sort of creativity that was originally there that it just feels like a Netflix movie. It just feels like, yep, this is that scene where, that just happened.
Yeah, you answered a question I was going to ask, actually, which is if Mr. Peanuts is a thing from something, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's Planters Peanuts. That's, I guess, an American brand, but he is I wouldn't say super well-known mascot here in America, but like, he's a mascot. He's absolutely a brand name.
It's the one they could get the rights to, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
It's so milquetoast. It really, I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say about it, and this goes for most Netflix original movies, but it's so lacking any personality or any like shred of its own soul. Like it doesn't feel at any point like there's an artistic like flourish or something that like I say, there's technically a lot of things that it's talking about. Like it's very kind of saccharine and it's very on the nose about what it's saying about anything. But it also just kind of feels like it's not because they're actually trying to say something about any of this. It's just because by default this premise has all these things. It feels so cookie cutter that it doesn't really feel like someone's got a strong stance on any of these things. Even like so you've got all obviously the idea of the robots representing a minority and human beings being awful to each other. But then you've also got this other idea that everyone's too addicted to their phones and that we have to connect with the real people and all that. And even that stuff, even though it should feel the most relevant thing ever, just felt so like, it could be I guess I want it to be a little more subtle, a little bit more subtext, and a little bit less, we're going to actually explain at times in voiceover exactly what we're talking about and exactly what we're saying. The characters actually say these things. They say, oh, everyone's too like, and like not in the real world. They're too addicted to this second screen technology and
oh my god. You just made it totally clear for me. Netflix literally just made a movie about how you can engage in second screen technology. Oh my god.
The thing for me as well was just like, so going back to the whole like why is it in the 90s thing, is that obviously the robots do have this kind of retro future kind of vibe to them, and they sort of tie that into the backstory where, hey, they're tying this into the creation of Disney, right? So Walt Disney built the first robots for Disney World, Disneyland, whatever, and over time they became these things that everyone had for chores, for jobs, whatever, blah blah blah.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so that's your retro future element. But everything else, like the headsets that are used for people to like use their virtual reality worlds and all that, and everything else, and like the droids that people control with their headsets, all of that stuff just felt modern. None of it, like all of it, just repeatedly told me this isn't really the 90s, because none of it feels like it fits into this time period. And I was trying to think outside of the general retro future vibe of the robots themselves. Is there anything in this movie that actually feels like the 90s? And I was struggling to come up with anything.
Yeah, there's a whole bit in here where Chris Pratt, we discover later on, is a smuggler, and all of his stuff is like early 90s. Like he's smuggling these toys and items that were like Cabbage Patch Kids. But like plot relevance wise, no, not really. The reason that it's set in the 90s is very clearly, hey, that's the audience now. That's who we're trying to engage this nostalgia factor with. Remember Cabbage Patch Kids? Remember that singing bass thing? It's in the movie. We're doing that.
Yeah, but what's so weird about it, though, is that, like, but the actual robots themselves, which are the actual plot and focus of the movie, are not 90s era-esque.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I think that's the idea where the Electric State book went in front of a studio exec, and they say, we love it, we love the style, we love that, we're just going to change everything about it. And then this movie got made with that IP slapped on top of it as kind of the bare minimum.
I mean, I don't want to just say the word bland like 50 times like I could, but I'm going to have to at least say it once just to make it clear that this is as bland as shit.
Yeah.
So let's just get that out of the way.
Even from the character introductions, like every time we get introduced to a character, you immediately know who they are, what their story's going to be, and exactly how they fit into every other piece of the plot here. At one point, we meet Stanley Tucci. Guess what? It's Stanley Tucci. Like, that's who he's playing.
Yes. The villain is Stanley Tucci, yes. I mean, there's actually a lot of famous people doing voices of robots in this. Some you might have noticed, some you might not have. Woody Harrelson is Mr. Peanut. Anthony Mackie's in there, Alan Tudyk's in there as a voice. Like there's a whole bunch of names and faces that pop up in some way or another. Giancarlo Esposito, who can't catch a break on this show this year, because between this and Megalopolis, the man is
I will give full credit to him in this one, just because of the nature of his role. He had to show up to exactly 2 days of filming.
Yes, most of his roles either sitting at a desk or he's just got like a close-up camera on his face. And
the Iron Man and like headset view where it's just inside the helmet. That's all he had to be around for. So he made a paycheck at the very least.
Yeah. Holly Hunter's got a tiny role early on. You know, Kehu Kwan's in there. He's an interesting person just because he was missing from acting for like 30 years and then just came back recently and now he's in things again.
Apparently his role was originally supposed to be filled by Michelle Yeoh, but she couldn't show up for
That's kind of
funny. Yeah, so then they got him.
Oh, is there anyone else from Everywhere, Everything All at Once that's available?
Yeah, they were just like, God, we really need to cash in on that movie. Hey, come on over.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know. And even like everything about this, like, it's very... I was thinking about Star Wars a lot as I was watching this, right? Just in terms of structure and how the plot moves. And you've got, Michelle, Millie Bobby Brown is kind of her look, right? The robots are Obi-Wan. She meets Han Solo, who's a smuggler, who gets her into where she needs to go to save someone. New allies are met. And I'm not saying it follows one-to-one from that point on, but there was just a lot of that in the first half of the movie where I could really feel just hey, we're just going to follow the structure of Star Wars because everyone likes the structure of Star Wars. And then the other thing is this movie's absurdly expensive, right? It's $320 million budget.
Oh, God. Yes.
Right?
I went to the Wikipedia page on most expensive movies, and I just got depressed, like, immediately, that this was so high up.
And I don't understand really why. I mean, I guess there's a lot of names in it, but it's just maybe a sign of the times of inflated budgets and far too much spending on things that shouldn't cost this much. And it's just... Obviously, it looks expensive, but it also doesn't look that impressive either. Like, the CG... is fine, but it clearly looks like CG a lot of the times. There's moments where it does that thing where a robot walks in the room and I'm like, oh, that's clearly like not there. Like it has that like it's detailed, but it definitely has kind of a fake sheen towards it. And then on top of that, you've got just some moments where there's like a clear green screen shot, but it's like it's in a place where I'm like, why is this a green screen shot? The actor's just standing with like the sky behind them. Like they couldn't have went outside and got a quick shot, you lazy bastards. Like,
nah, man, the filming schedule is so tight. If that day is overcast, you're done. You're never going to be able to film that shot.
It ties back into just the whole idea of like this feeling like content and not like an artistic endeavor. Like it doesn't feel like someone is passionate here. It doesn't feel like, the Russo brothers are like, oh, we've got something to say and we really want to like make a piece of art here. They're just pumping something out. And maybe that's not how they actually feel, but that's what comes across in the end. It just feels like, again, hashtag content.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily put this on the Russos. I mean, I'm sure, they have their own pull. It's quite a bit on them. But this feels to me like a top-down executive sort of thing, where it's like, we're spending enough to be the 13th most expensive movie of all time. You have to take our notes and do what we say. And so it becomes so sanitized and so lacking of vision by the end that it's like, yeah, this is all that they ever could have possibly made once the budget gets that big. I
don't think I want to get them off the hook that much, because as much as there might be some truth to that, like even under those conditions, you would think that at least specific scenes in a vacuum would still have a spark of life to them, or something like, just like some cinematography choices that I don't think the studio was giving them notes on that. So, or whatever it may be, it feels so devoid of it, and honestly, it really makes me doubt that, the Russos clearly did a decent enough job with some of those Marvel movies, but I do wonder how much of that was them being held up by the fact that, these characters are already established, people already care about them, they just have to kind of come in and kind of, put it together kind of thing, whereas, because it's not like, as much as I had fun with Endgame when it came out, for example, it's not like I was sitting there going, oh, this is so well directed, like, this is like, that's what's making this work here. It wasn't. Yeah. It was other stuff. So
yeah, and I do want to point out the Electric State book, from what I understand, is not so much the plot that people really like. It is this atmosphere. It is the setting. It's the sort of Fallout-esque idea, and that's just gone. Like there is, like, as much as the robots are there, the idea of this larger world in a way that feels super interesting like that is just completely devoid. It's absolutely just, again, you keep on throwing it out there. It's this bland sort of, this is the future. Except, of course, as we said, it's not. It's 1994 or whatever, but it's got that vibe to it where it's just vague technological advances, and we're not going to specifically tell you what is and is not different here.
Yeah, so I've just looked him up. So just to correct what I said earlier, I said Simon something. I got his name wrong. Simon Stalenhag is the
Okay.
the correct name of the author of the book. And
Hmm.
I believe he's an artist, and I think because there's a show on Amazon called Tales from the Loop, which I think was based on his paintings. So he's got an aesthetic that he kind of always like works for, and it's very much the kind of like Midwest but with robots in it kind of vibe. The you can see if you just Google some of his images, you can see a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking through a bunch of them right now, and it's a very, very clear line of somewhere between Last of Us, where everything's kind of dilapidated and broken down, but also highly mechanized future, where you've got all this, looming mega structures of technological wonder or whatever.
Yeah. And they are gorgeous. Like I can totally see like there been a cool movie or a TV show or something if something nailed these visuals but actually had like a well thought out plot, something that had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what jumps into my mind the most is the movie that we did semi-recently, The Creator. Like, that strikes me as the kind of tone that this movie needed to have.
I think that's maybe just a little veering... Visually, I mean, like, I'm not talking about the plot here, but it's veering maybe just a little outside of the almost, like, melancholia that this art gives me. But, I see what you mean, though, in terms of like, the overall idea of what the story was.
Just like a bit more... Honestly, I think that's kind of my biggest problem with this, is setting it in this sort of 90s aesthetic. And god damn it, Chris Pratt. Because it's... The moment you involve those, there's almost this peppiness to it. There's this vibe of, hey, remember the 90s were a good time, and therefore we're going to, like, send you back. We're going to, like, do happier-ish sort of, like, tone to the world. Whereas the art that I'm looking at here is absolutely depressing, and like it's a world gone absolute haywire. And I don't get that. You honestly set this in the 2020s, feel smack dab right on the money.
Well, that's the weird thing about it. What you just said there is about, this is taking you back to some happier nostalgia times, but almost everything that technically it's touching on thematically is super relevant and should feel harder hitting. And any times that it tries to do, isn't it sad that everyone's addicted to these like VR headsets that everyone's using? It just kind of comes across as hokey, and it comes across as like a PSA when I'm like, no, if you actually did something hard hitting, it would land, it would work, it would make sense in the modern context. And even if you still set the movie in the 90s for whatever reason, it should still hit. But because the sentimentality that this movie has, and just how much... Because there's so many other movies that I can see this pulling from that work better, that do have nicer vibes, right? Yeah. There's a little bit of Iron Giant in this. There's definitely a lot of Big Hero 6 in this, if you've seen that.
I'm not going to say it's done better, but one that kept jumping up to me was, this is the 90s equivalent of Ready Player One.
I see what you're saying.
In some ways, not in the this is an ad for everything the 80s ever made.
No, but like I think that's a different comparison to what I'm making, though. I'm making the comparison that I'm seeing lots of good movies in here. You just give me a shit movie and said,
that's what I said. Yeah, it's not a good movie. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
No, but the point I'm making, though, is I can see several movies this is pulling from that are good and handle the elements better. Right. I can see the comparison to Ready Player One, but that's more of like why it's bad.
Yeah. That's fair.
So I need to go.
One thing I wanted to bring up, though, is it's not even... I don't know how to describe it, because it's not a subplot, but it's also not the main plot. It's just kind of the MacGuffin background reasoning as to why they're doing this to begin with, and that is these VR headsets. And it's so strange the way the movie plays it off, because in the earlier parts, it really feels like they're trying to go for like a drug addiction sort of vibe. Like, this is something that is ruining lives and ruining relationships, and ultimately it is tearing humanity apart. And then by the time it hits the end of the movie, it kind of just feels like they pivoted to, actually, it's closer to you just like being on your smartphone a lot or checking Twitter. Like, it lost so much of the impact that I think even, like, again, the art is really selling this addiction vibe to it. And by the end, it's just kind of a, hey, go out and talk to your neighbors, guys. The world is cool.
I think I got the smartphone comparison immediately at the start. I get why you're saying drug addiction though, but I think that was the point, is that, oh, we are addicted to this like it is a drug. Like, I think it was trying to do both.
Yeah, but like they're not showing that there is any real consequence of like people who, once they get out of this place. Like that's the problem for me, is this VR thing is set up as this thing of people are locked in and they never ever leave. But then when people do end up leaving, it's like, okay, well, you know, we'll get on with things, whatever.
Well, we never see that though. We never see people leave.
No, we see there's a few characters every once in a while, mainly the Jason Alexander character early on, who I thought was going to be a whole thing of he's locked in and can't get out because he's choosing not to. But then at one point he gets out and it's like, okay, so what's the problem? What is the issue here if he's able to leave so easily?
Oh, no, I think that's missing the point. Like, why are you making me defend this? I just because this is shit. But like, that's not the point. The point isn't that people can't just leave. The point is that he's addicted to it like a phone. It's that he spends very little time away from it. He's always locked in, to the point where he's using a robot drone to parent rather than doing it himself. The point isn't supposed to be it's so addictive that you can't ever walk away from it for you to even to go to a piss.
That's what I feel like the vibe of it is supposed to be. Like, I know that's not what it actually is, but I feel like the moment that you introduce this as a plot point, by making it something so minor as phone addiction, like, that's maybe they're trying to make phone addiction out to be a much bigger thing than I feel like it is. But that just feels like the most tiny little thing of, really, your big problem is the kids today don't talk to each other anymore? Like, is that really
David,
the vibe
why are you
for?
making me defend parts of this? You're just missing the point. The point isn't that we're addicted to phones and that's a problem because we're not being as social. The problem is that we're addicted to our phones, and that's what's made social media blow up, and it lets people like Elon Musk take control of the effing country, you idiot. That's what the point of this is. It's about all the bigger problems that are coming from people being always online all the time and not touching grass. It is a bigger problem. It's not just being addicted to stupid things that you're playing on your phone.
Okay, but I didn't get that. I didn't feel that at all over the course of the movie.
I'm not saying that's in the movie, but that's the point of what saying the dangers of like being addicted to always being online is.
All right. Calm down. It's a Netflix original movie. It's okay.
I'm not saying the movie does any of this well, and I'm not saying the movie makes a clear point of what it's trying to say, but I think clearly when it's touching on these subjects, the bigger dangers that it's going for are these kinds of things. The society will fall down because we look at things differently, because we let things slide, because we become out of touch, that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not saying the movie actually gets to make all those points coherently, but simply that's what the danger is. The problem with this movie is not that the things that it's touching on are invalid. They're all perfectly valid things to talk about, and they're all very, they're all key issues that are very relevant today. But what those things aren't the problem. The problem here is how it presents those ideas. It's how it presents.
Feels like it's bringing them up, but it just doesn't have anything to say about them. It feels like it's just kind of the most, again, sanitized idea of like, we all need to get along together. Well, no shit.
Yeah, it's saying the most milquetoast, basic, bland thing you possibly could, which is, it's like making a movie talking about racism and then at the end just saying, let's not be racist, and roll credits. Like that's the equivalent here, right? That's what it is. Rather than exploring why did the people who are racist become racist, what's leading down that path, how do we try and combat it, or how, whatever, the movie even has a character, I won't say who obviously for spoiler's sake, but there's a character in this who maybe has a bit of a turn throughout the story, and even that is the most like it only happens because there's something so clearly black and white at one point that clearly there's no interesting shades of gray. There's no tough moral decision that is made. It's simply just clearly bad guy is bad, good guy is good. Choice is easy if you're also not bad guy.
Yeah, and that's also the other thing that a lot of these movies are starting to do. I mean, they've been doing it for years, but I'm seeing a lot more of them now, which is the idea of you have this purely capitalist businessman character who makes a absolutely evil decision. He's clearly an evil person, but the movie is not interested in saying, oh, is the whole system corrupt? Is this just a necessity that comes out of the system that these people are always going to be this bad to be this successful? No, it's this one guy. This one guy's the problem. And everything else is totally fine. Don't question the rest of the system. It's just this one guy. And that's what I get pissed off with those kind of movies.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think better scripts and better movies will sort of do it both ways, where it gives you the boogeyman to take down by the end, but still kind of alludes to the larger problem of why someone like this was able to do this in the first place.
Right.
Obviously, this is not the movie that, that is going to do that or is making any attempt at anything. This is a movie that's very much made to be safe and be like, hey, we gave you a boogeyman and it's kind of hitting the things that are relevant, but we're not actually going to upset the powers that be by actually suggesting anything. Even though you could easily just compare this guy to Musk if you really wanted to.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
He's if Musk was actually able to make something that works.
I don't know, I saw a video getting shared around of someone just like ripping parts of a Cybertruck apart with their hands. Like, is that easy to just rip parts of it off because they're just glued on?
Mm-hmm.
Built to last.
I was gonna say, no end to that story. Just a funny little anecdote.
Just an anecdote. That's all. It was mildly amusing. Dear. So, all right. It's probably time for spoilers, more or less.
Sure.
I don't really have anything to say about the score. I mentioned the song choices already. There's a bunch of popular songs that are used. Sometimes some characters are listening to stuff on the radio, and it's meant to be, hey, they're listening to punk rock about fighting the law, and it's whatever. It's
that's one other thing that kind of bothers me about alternate history. Obviously, I don't expect them to go out and just like map this whole thing of here's all the different decisions that were made. But if you had robot assistants that were able to do all of your jobs, that then resulted in a robot war at some point in the early 90s, you'd think history would be a little bit different between the 50s to now.
Yeah, and yet all these songs still exist.
Yeah, all these songs, all the toys are still the same, all the styles are still the same. It's gone exactly the same. We just happen to have a robot war going on over there.
Oh, Marky Mark, that's another song that comes up.
Oh, that's right. And they do a whole, like, yeah, that happened sort of joke at it, and god damn it.
We get Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. We get Journey. We get Oasis.
Yep. I'll see if I can find a full soundtrack.
And when there's a big battle scene going on, a robot who plays piano starts doing the Apocalypse Now Valkyrie song. The dun 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 dun.
I think there's also the open to I Will Survive as well.
Oh yeah. Yep. All the hits are here.
Mm-hmm. Wonderwall, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, Good Vibrations, Take Me to the River because it got that big mouth bass toy, and Mary Jane's Last Dance. Along with a couple others that I don't recognize as well.
I don't think I know what that last one was, Mary Jane's Last Dance. I might know it if I hear it, but I don't know that.
It's Tom Petty. I don't know it well enough to sing it reliably.
Fair enough. All right, spoilers for Electric State. You have been warned, but but let it be known. Do not watch this piece of shit. It's boring. It's bland. I would much rather watch a bad movie that's interesting than watch this. I enjoy most of the things we watch for extra reels more than I enjoyed this.
Yeah. No, I watched this less than 24 hours ago, and it's already starting to fade from my mind. I don't think a single character name really stuck in my head.
Oh no, I always have IMDb open when we're talking just so I can look over. If you'd asked me what's Chris Pratt's character's name, I couldn't have told you without looking.
Yep. Gone. You told Millie Bobby Brown's character, I don't remember. They said it once at the end of the movie, and I was like, oh, right, that's her name. I should remember that.
Yeah, no one's name stuck out, really. Anyway, spoilers, all that.
Yes.
So, the movie is all centered around a sickeningly sweet brother-sister relationship. The younger brother, Christopher, is so smart. He's such a brainiac. He's doing this test. And the guy at the university is shocked that he's finished so early. Because we find out immediately from Millie Bobby Brown, Einstein took 3 days to finish that test.
Yeah. Einstein didn't have access to the internet to learn whatever he wanted, though. So kind of makes sense. But whatever. Continue.
I mean, it's 1991. I mean, does he have access to the internet?
I'm assuming that they do because it's 1994 and they've all got hookups to this data cloud storage thing in their VR headsets. again, there's this issue where if you don't establish what the history is, you can just do whatever you want, and then it doesn't matter.
Yep. So she's like, "Ah, you're gonna have to cut," and they do like this little handshake thing, and it's all very lovey-dovey.
The kid's wearing a shirt of a cartoon character called Kid Cosmo, who's like a robot, and they bump into a military guy who says, "Yeah, real funny, wearing a robot on your shirt. War's coming, man. You got to get ready." It's like, what? Why are you so offended over a cartoon shirt? And literally the kid says that. He's like, it's a cartoon. What, that's illegal now? But the little handshake they do is from that Kid Cosmo show where it's like half a heart on your chest.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Yeah, no, it's actually one of my problems because later on, when the robots try to convince her that it's her brother, who's actually inside the robot or mentally in the robot, whatever you want to phrase it, yes. He does the handshake, and that's kind of the moment where it proves to her that it might be him. And part of me thought, yeah, but the whole thing with the robot is that he can't speak. He can only speak in the pre-programmed lines that the robot had to say, which are all lines from the show. So I was thinking, how is this convincing? If it's a thing he did on the show, right, theoretically, it could just be him doing the thing that he's supposed to do because it's something that he did on the show. Yeah.
Okay, so I really didn't like the Bumblebee aspect to this. The idea that he is only able to speak through pre-recorded lines.
I did think of that as well. I thought there's a bit of Transformers in this.
Yeah, but like I don't even mind that it's yanking from Transformers. That's whatever. It just is so... It's only there to delay the plot. It's only there so that he's not able to directly speak to the sister and explain everything outright. It's just there to keep things where it's a guessing game and like they can't reason through stuff and keep this barrier up between brother and sister so that in the third act we can get the whole "I'm finally talking to you" thing.
Well, because they even do a thing when he first shows up as the robot, and she's scared at first, of course, where he kind of like tilts his head to say, "Hey, like fix me, I can't speak." And she like, reconnects a couple of cables and then he can speak, but it's only these pre-recorded lines. I was thinking, oh, he couldn't speak for this first couple of scenes for the introduction. That's fine. Once she connects the cables, he can talk, and we'll start getting some conversation out of him. But then they did the Bumblebee thing, so it's like, okay, I guess we're just going to keep this sort of like cute gimmick going where he has to point to things, or he has to hold up the Dr. Pepper can to really emphasize that he's talking about a doctor at one point.
Yes, that first we'll get to that sequence, but like that sequence where she's trying to guess who the hell they're talking about, she can't get glasses after like 3 guesses, but he holds up a Dr. Pepper can. She's like, "Doctor, yes, that's what I get from that."
You want someone who grows peppers. That's what you want.
You want a soda manufacturer. Understood.
Some aluminium.
Yes.
That's what we want, is it?
The doctor at the recycling plant, of course.
So whole thing, yes, and her foster father is Jason Alexander. George Costanza is in this movie.
We just to be clear, we jump ahead by like 5 years. The whole war happened. And
I was going to go back. So there's a whole like news program. Like, hey, here's what happened in the last like 3 years that no one has been talking about.
The Clinton administration.
Oh god, the CG Clinton face in one of those shots where he was like handshaking.
Yeah, they didn't even try.
Yeah, war hero Giancarlo Esposito with the Stanley Tucci, because his company built this tech that let them all have, because basically they build drones that are controlled by humans that are wearing these VR headsets. The idea being that they can fight robots with robots, but the robots they've got are now just drones operated by humans. Yeah. So, right, so they explain all the backstory, which we kind of did earlier, because it's just the basic backstory of the movie for the most part. But she's in foster care because her entire family's dead, and her foster father's just this asshole who likes getting the social security check to keep her, he gets paid
the
basically.
Welfare. Yeah.
And he is the slobby middle-aged dude. Which I will say this, I was like, hey, you know what? Jason Alexander's not as old as I thought he was, because he actually did not look that ancient here. So
it's weird. If you just get that sort of balding haircut style way early in your career, you're going to look the same for like 50 years after.
I'm early in that stage myself.
There you
So, no, that was just kind of funny. I was like, but I didn't even realize it was him because the first time she speaks to him, it's the drone because he's sitting with his VR headset, and I didn't realize it was him. It wasn't until he came in during the robot scene and it was him in person that I went, oh, it's George.
Yeah.
So hey, fun, but. Yeah, like, so, we see that she doesn't like wearing the headsets, even though it's mandatory in school for lessons, which I guess is like today, all the kids have tablets to pull out in school, I think.
It's all the iPads and stuff, yeah.
So she refuses, and we find out about her family. And we also find out that her family did not die in the war. They died during the war, but not in the war, because her father, whilst driving, hit a deer, and it killed the parents. And seemingly killed the brother, although we find out something a little bit different as the movie goes on.
So that sequence was where I immediately had some issues of Millie Bobby Brown. Not in her acting. Her acting is fine, not great. It's just the script she's given is trash. But the issue that I had with the script of her character is she's talking to the principal character. The principal's like trying to gently chew her out for not putting on the headset and doing the lesson plans and all that. And she says, oh, do I have to call your mother? And then Millie Bobby Brown goes, turn the page. And we see her turn the page and it says family deceased. And I'm like, okay, so it's just going to be that smart alecky, knows better than all the adults character that she has consistently played at this point.
Wait, has she?
Well, I'm thinking more of all the Stranger Things kids collectively, but
yeah, because she's all the other kids are like that. I don't think she's like that in Stranger Things.
She's not. But also Enola Holmes, I'm pretty sure she's like that. I caught a little bit of that. I never watched the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, but she's meant to be like mini Sherlock in that. Of course, she's a smart ass.
Sure.
No, I mean, my thing here with what you just said is that I'm like, at least that would be a character. I felt like she didn't even do that for the rest of the movie. Like, she's very non-personality for the most part.
I mean, she's constantly going up against Chris Pratt. Like, that's the thing where I feel like she's constantly... But he's the one playing, like, a man-child, so it kind of evens out that she's trying to act like more of an adult than he is.
Yeah, but it's not... I feel like she doesn't even have, like, a chance to, like, show her smarts or whatever. Yeah. She just kind of... She feels very just in neutral, and this is not, like, her as an actress's fault. This is just the script. It just writes her as this just bland thing. And then Chris Pratt's character, it's like, oh, we're just going to write Chris Pratt. We're just going to have him say the things that you expect Chris Pratt to say. And it's tired at this point, right?
God, it's so bad.
There was novelty, right? One, James Gunn was better at writing it. But when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, it was like, hey, he's a entertaining leading guy. This works. But then he's just kept being given similar roles over and over again. He's just but written by lesser writers who don't give him funny things to actually say. So he's left saying stuff like, don't cut my hair, and I'm not dying to Marky Mark.
Yeah, I love you maybe more than a friend.
So I don't know, but anyway, the robot shows up. She is reluctant to believe, but when Jason Alexander comes in swinging a bat and wanting to like arrest them and whatnot, she ends up going on the run with the robot. She's got like an ankle bracelet on, so she's not allowed to run from home. But the robot just breaks it off. It's not a thing.
It's literally just made of why has she stuck around in this abusive house if she's so fiercely independent, and then they immediately get rid of it the moment she needs to leave the house.
Yeah. I'll say neglectful house rather than abusive per se, but
that's fair.
Yeah. So I mean, especially since he's very open about the fact you're just here because I get paid to keep you. So yeah. Anyway, so basically it's like, okay, we have to go find wherever we want to go, and
Yeah. Well, they so the gist of it is that he's inside the robot body. He can't properly communicate, but she's wondering how the hell this happened, because obviously he was supposed to have died however many years ago. And while he can't directly say what they need to do, he does say there's a doctor with glasses who she vaguely remembers from the hospital who knows what's up. And this doctor with the glasses is in the exclusion zone, which is just the camp for all the robots out in the desert. So now they are on a quest to get into this heavily guarded exclusion zone and that's their motivating force.
That's it. Yeah, they've got a quest, and the one thing they know is that because the foster father bought a lot of illegal items from the exclusion zone, because there's a whole smuggling thing going on there, they're able to say, hey, the person who owns this PO box, it's on all these like packages that this guy had in his car, he'll know how to get into the exclusion zone, so let's go find him. So they travel across country to this PO box and basically stake it out until Chris Pratt shows up in his big truck. And Chris Pratt, he gets the most generic introduction where we follow his feet as he leaves the truck. There's like rock music playing. He's got this stupid long hair. Honestly, it's so funny that I rewatched Point Break just like the other night because he's got Point Break hair. He's got the Patrick Swayze in this.
Yeah, we do get one tiny little glimpse of Chris Pratt before this scene, and it's during like the news sequence where we see that he was a soldier. He was someone on the front lines of the fight. And we'll get more of that in the backstory, but you do get a little bit of, okay, he's essentially this world's version of a Vietnam vet, where he got back disillusioned and he's just doing his own thing now.
Yeah, and he's smuggling stuff from the zone. Someone tries to betray him, but they're using like their drone bot to betray him. So this reveals that Chris Pratt's actually got like a partner who's a robot that he's working with, Herm, and he
voiced
becomes
by Anthony Mackie.
Yes, and he becomes one of the more prominent main characters in the movie. So it's like, hey, he's friends with a robot, and they're quirky. They have like a sort of banter relationship where they're cracking jokes at each other. You'll enjoy all those.
Man, I really enjoyed them for about 2.5 seconds. Then it got old real quick. There isn't it when we hop back in their truck. They have a little cave hideout area between the wall of the exclusion zone.
Just to fill this in here, Michelle and Cosmo / Christopher, whoever we're going to call the robot with the brother's head inside it. They sneak on the truck, so they go with them into wherever.
Yep. We get a little sequence, I guess is the best way to call it, where we get introduced to the fact that they are smuggling. But then that's about half the scene is them saying, oh, we're smugglers, like what's in that box, it's super expensive, okay, cool. The other half of the scene is an extended improv, I hope, of the fridge was left unplugged.
Oh, I forgot about this fridge saga.
Oh boy, the fridge, like, it goes on forever until finally they accidentally make some noise, the kids do, and then we get on with the rest of the plot. But I was pulling my hair out during the sequence of, shut up, shut up.
You say kids, but I suppose the brother technically still would be a kid. I was actually a little confused as to the age of Michelle at this point, because the opening scene where he's like testing to get into college, and he's clearly like maybe 13, 14, whatever, and it's the whole thing. He's a brainiac, right? He's super smart, he's jumping ahead. What, fine, sure, right? But she's like, hey, I can't believe you're going to college before I am, which to me said she's already in high school, and it's something that relatively is on the horizon, right? Maybe in a year or two. Right. So when we jump ahead to 1994, and she's still going to high school, I thought, wait, what age were you meant to be in the opening scene? I don't understand.
I don't know. I mean, at this point, there's going to be a turning point where all of a sudden Millie Bobby Brown is not allowed to play high school age anymore, but we haven't hit it yet. And she's just consistently at that age.
Well, which is fine. Like, well, like most high schoolers in movies and TV shows are, in their early to mid 20s. Like, so it's fine. She's still in that range to be playing that role. It was just weird though, because they kind of already made her feel like a high school student in that opening scene.
Honestly, that opening scene did not tell me a goddamn thing about either of their ages. Like, I know there was supposed to be this implication. The only thing I got was she was older. Because like you said, it's the going before me. But outside of that, the fact that he's taking this test and apparently he's supposed to be like 5 times smarter than Einstein makes me think that he's supposed to be barely in middle school, in which point she could be in middle school up to high school, anything like that. But yes, coming back to the modern day and she's still in high school felt weird. It definitely didn't feel like after an entire war breaks out, she should still be in high school.
They changed her hair and stuff, right? But the problem is that, like all high schoolers in movies, she just looks like an adult. So it didn't feel like she'd aged up. So it just felt strange. And if you're telling me she's in middle school in that opening scene, like, come on now.
No, I don't. There's a weird little, I think it's a dream sequence. It might just be a memory later on of a beach scene. And it's just Millie Bobby Brown comforting Christopher because, like, I don't know, Sandcastle got knocked over or whatever.
No, his toy Cosmo got broken.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. And the Christopher, he looks young. He looks maybe like 6, 7 years old. They did a good job with that. But Millie Bobby Brown still looks the exact same goddamn age. So I don't know. Maybe she's just a turtle. Maybe she's a robot herself. Who knows?
No, it's just so funny that she looks the same age in this, no matter what like part of the timeline it's supposed to be. But if you watch Stranger Things, she has literally aged from being a child to being, she's married now. She's effing married. She went from being like 10-year-old in that first season, and she's going to be married before the final season comes out. It's like we have watched her grow up in that show, and then you watch this, and it's like she's just always 20 in this. This is weird.
Yep. Anyway, so we get the underground little
tower. Hold your horses.
Okay, what's up?
Back to this fridge thing for a second, because
okay.
So this is important because it establishes a running joke that is now going to be here for the next half hour of the movie, which is that because all of his food's been ruined because the fridge was, because he thinks the fridge has died. That's what the joke is here, right? But then when he throws the burrito that's probably going to make him sick because it's out of date or it's been off and bad now, the microwave doesn't turn on. And that's when he's like, wait a minute. He finds the plug. The extension cord has been moved. And this is where it becomes, like you say, this improv bit where he starts chastising Herm the robot. Hey, did you steal the extension cord for your charging station? And that's what the whole joke's about. But this leads... For the next half hour, Chris Pratt just wants to eat. He keeps asking, is there food there? I'm starving. Yep. Where is the food? Oh, they have no food inside the restricted zone. Wait, you have Twinkies and beans? Yeah, I'll have that.
Oh, I only get to take a bite, but then I gotta run off and do other things.
And then they just drop it, which, don't get me wrong, it was a bad joke, so it's not like I missed it, but at the same time, at least give me a satisfying scene where he gets a burger or something finally. Like,
Nah, it's I didn't bring it up because it's nothing. It's a nothing subplot.
Everything's a nothing plot in this. We'd have nothing to say if we just ignored everything.
That's fair. So ratings.
Anyway, Giancarlo Esposito has been put on the task of finding this outlaw robot and teenager. And he actually has tracked them to this den, and he ends up interfering. So we get like a whole like discount Terminator-esque sequence where he's like stalking them around the various shelves. Millie Bobby Brown turns the power off at one point, and Esposito just
no. Doesn't just turn off the power. This is the 90s. It's a clapper.
That's
she
right.
claps off.
And they set up that she knew how to do that because she saw it get turned on. So, ha ha ha. I've never had the pleasure of using a clapper, but you know.
I don't think it's a pleasurable thing. I think it's probably more obnoxious than anything else.
No, that's fair. I was not being serious.
I always wonder if you watch like some sort of, reality TV show, some game show where there is a live studio audience that claps, whether or not your lights in your house just on, off, on, off, on, off.
I don't know. It may have been more of an American thing. I don't think I ever saw this in the flesh. I don't think I ever experienced a real in the flesh. Someone has a clapper.
It seems properly American laziness, where we can't even be asked to flip a light switch anymore. So yeah,
I mean, there's some use. Like if someone's like in a wheelchair or something, I can see there being like people who it actually makes it an accessibility thing.
Yes, for the people who cannot walk, great. For the people who refuse to walk, that's who's using
it. Yes, I mean that is true. Yes. So. Anyway, we get a whole Terminator bit here. When the lights go off, Giancarlo Esposito's like droid just like turns on a light. He's got a big torch under his face. It's fine. So it's a whole thing. My problem with this scene is it kept like doing things that it didn't set up, so it just felt like really random and cheap. So for example, at one point a big lever's pulled for a big claw to come down and grab Giancarlo's droid. And it just kind of like, okay, so he's trapped for a bit. And I'm like, okay, you did not set this up. You did not set this big claw up. It came out of nowhere. And then like a minute later, when he's chasing him down this tunnels, because the whole access that Chris Pratt has to the exclusion zone is that there's like a mine tunnel that he uses to go through. So they get on these mine carts and they're finally getting it moving. but then they get blasted, and they're still not away from the bad guy chasing them.
Yep.
And then out of nowhere, Millie Bobby Brown drives a tractor into Giancarlo's droid, and I'm like, again, this tractor was not set up. Like, I don't know. They kept like doing things, and I'm like, where was the build up to these things? Where was the teasing of these various elements?
Yeah, I think it would have been a little bit better if there had even just been a single throwaway line of, ever since we took over this mining outpost or something like that, ever since, they abandoned this shaft, in order to just say there are tools from the mining thing that are left over here. And that would explain why this stuff is happening.
Well, I don't even need an explanation. Like, even just something as simple as one shot of Millie Bobby Brown looking over and seeing a tractor, cut back to the action, and then she drives in. There you go. Boom, done. But it kept doing things without even giving us the moment of the character having like I've got an idea moment,
Oh, yeah. No, that's consistently throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Like, they do not have those shots of, we know exactly what we're going to do now.
And there's more interesting ways of doing it, don't get me wrong. That is the bare minimum way of doing it. But, like, at least that would be something.
Yeah. I want to interject here, not because it's a good place to, but it's something that I've been thinking. Where did the Kid Cosmo robot come from?
Some heap somewhere. I don't know.
So later on in the movie we get the explanation. I won't go too deep into it, but it's his consciousness was uploaded into this robot. He was alive elsewhere, he uploaded it here, and now he's running around. But from everything we see about robots, they are separate. Like, there's the drone aspect, which can be controlled by humans, but they are not robots. They cannot operate independently. And then you got robots, which have their own intelligence. So now you've got this robot that can somehow take the capacity of a human intelligence that also just happens to be the icon of his favorite cartoon growing up with his sister. And it's never explained.
It being the character he likes, I think I can hand wave that away by saying when he, like, his consciousness went looking for a robot to take, he picked the one he liked, right? I can hand wave that away quite easily. Admittedly, how did he do it when these robots seemingly don't connect to the internet? That's another, like, I don't know, because he's special, because he's
the smartest boy.
It's a whole thing. I mean, just to explain the back, like, what's going on here, right? So we'll get back to what the main characters actually do for the rest of the movie, but it turns out that the reason why the war changed, right? And because for some reason, and this is the part that really bugged me and felt like lazy script writing, is that I didn't understand why this virtual reality that everyone taps into with their headsets is necessary for the control of the drones by soldiers with the headsets. I didn't understand why either of these two things were linked, but they are. For some reason they are, right? This virtual reality mainframe has to exist for both things to happen. So,
well, they just to be clear with the initial news segment, the drones came first during the war. And it was like the final weapon they needed to turn the tides, and the war was over in a week, and they absolutely decimated the robots. Then the tech became consumer grade, but it wasn't for controlling for military purposes. It was for allowing you to stay at home and do whatever while the drone is off doing your chores and such, like doing the work and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then they barely touch on it, but it's the fact that your mind gets bifurcated. So half of your brain is doing the work aspect, and the other half of your brain is in this VR paradise where you can experience whatever joyous things you want at any point.
Yeah, but it was such a weird thing because I'm just ignoring, or the movie's just ignoring the idea of, like, couldn't you potentially just link a person from a headset straight to a drone? Why does it have to go through this VR network thing? But whatever. They say it does, so we have to just roll with it.
Yeah.
So the reason why this started during the war is because after the car accident, right, the little brother did not die. Now, to be fair, as we find out from Quan, who was the doctor who just treated them and all that, he was effectively dead in the sense that he was in a coma that he was never really going to wake up from, right? It was like, he's as good as dead, so he did not have a huge moral problem with lying and saying, your little brother's dead, because he effectively is.
The only way he's going to survive is if we use him for this other purpose where you have to believe that he's dead.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, he'd be dead without being hooked up to all these computers anyway. But because when they scanned him and all that, it's like, oh, his brain's special. He's super, like, genius. And
He's
like
the smartest boy.
Yeah. So it's like, so he's basically the brain that makes all this VR stuff work. And that's the premise of the movie, is that he is hooked up to all this stuff. He's in the headquarters, and his conscience at some point found a way to get to this robot and go and ask his sister for help. And that's what the plot of the movie is. And the plot is to get back to him and save him from all this. And that's what's going on.
Get his body out of there, because obviously living in a robot is not ideal for him.
But also, because his mind is now away, or at least half of his mind's away on this robot, the VR mainframe is starting to break down, and that's why Stanley Tucci is determined to go capture the robot and get his mind back where it belongs, because he wants his corporation and his empire to keep continuing forward. And that's his motivations as a villain.
Yep. It's 100. It's so poorly explained, but it's explained kind of in the same way that like the Matrix is, where it's, why do the robots who should be better at computing than anybody else need humans? And obviously the Matrix says, oh, it's for battery power, it's, our juice, whatever. But this one, it's saying this human is so smart, he's able to sort through all the data better than a computer can if we just hook his brain up the right way. So if without him, essentially all the data servers become overloaded and they're unable to function.
For reasons.
Yeah.
There's not really much of a solid explanation for it. And I think it almost hurts the movie that, like, I just, like, some of these things just feel weird and don't make sense because we have a better understanding of what actual technology is.
Yeah.
Like, knowing the actual internet, knowing how actual one-to-one connections work, just makes all this feel a bit hokey. And, like, if it almost does feel like whoever wrote the script wrote it in the 90s when they didn't understand how all the technology works. Like, do you know, like, when you go back to the 90s and they write dialogue about computers or about hacking and stuff like that? This movie feels like in some ways it was written in those times when the writers just did not understand how any of that stuff actually works.
Yeah, I think it's almost at a disservice, especially nowadays, where we do have things like ChatGPT and whatnot that can very easily pass Turing tests. And so you get this issue of, okay, well, back then, at least we could say a computer will never be truly human. But nowadays, it's like, nah, it's like 95% of the way there. It's like pretty much at its door of saying what a human is.
Well, that's the other problem I had with this, actually, is how it just glosses over at the start. Like, all the robots started to rebel because they were slaves, effectively. And I'm like, okay, but, like, why do they have a conscience or a consciousness? Right. Why do they have, like, a personality? Why do they have feelings at all? Like, you building a droid that is, like, built for a purpose, which is, and might be delivering mail, like we see in this movie. There was like a mail lady robot. There's a, there's an entertainment robot. There's a baseball robot, whatever. If they're just designed to perform one task, so over time, isn't it kind of amazing and worth telling the story of how they all developed, like, life? They all developed, like, the ability to be self-aware and realize, hey, I'm being exploited.
No, honestly, I feel like this is the most prescient thing that actually links it to modern day stuff, is the idea of, we have all of these technologies, all of these things that have been clearly established, and, like, we don't need to have AI with them. And yet, for some reason, everything is having AI added anyway. Like, right now, that's the thing where, like you said, you have a mail delivery robot. Does the mail delivery robot need to be sentient? Can you just program it to deliver the mail as just its own thing? Probably. But instead, we gave it life, because why not? Like, we have the ability to do so we're just going to. And that feels like the only thing that kind of is what we're actually doing nowadays, not with life, but just this idea of, even things that don't need AI, we're slapping AI in it.
Well, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying there, and you're talking about real life right now. That's a fair point. But none of this is in the movie. There is no hint in this movie that they gave, like, them, like, some operating software that could develop and could continue to grow or something like that. They don't even talk about it. And even early on, like, part of the news at one point you see is like a debate between a robot and like a
God, I hated that scene.
Whoever. And the guy's like, hey, if my toaster breaks, I throw it in the trash and I buy a new toaster. And then the robot's like, that's murder. And I'm like, no, it's still a toaster. It still doesn't think for itself. A toaster's not a robot with sentience.
No, but that's the thing, is that the implication here is that humanity, for whatever stupid goddamn reason, gave the toaster sentience. Like, they said, hey, toaster, your purpose is to make me toast, and the toaster has to sit there with this ennui for the rest of its life until it breaks.
I think you're jumping a leap there. I don't think
because every single, like, machine we see in this movie, like you said, there's a baseball one. The baseball one is literally just designed to throw baseballs. That's it. That's all it does. It is a batting practice robot. But they gave it life and sentience for no other reason than, why not?
Oh yeah, but they never show us a toaster though that's sentient.
Oh well, no, of course, but like they do have what's that one? The piano playing taco robot. Even Mr. Peanut. Like, what would Mr. Peanut's purpose be besides just, I'm a mascot for the peanut brand?
No, but you're missing the point of what I'm saying here, though. I'm not talking about them making lots of stupid robots that don't really have a purpose or shouldn't have sentience. I'm saying that he specifically compares to a toaster, and the robot gets offended. The robot shouldn't be offended. That's a stupid line. When we have no context for any other assumption other than he's just talking about a regular toaster.
Yeah.
And of course that shouldn't be offensive because it is just a toaster. It doesn't even have a motherboard.
No, that specific sequence, I hate that sequence because both sides are stupid. Like, the robot getting offended over a potentially non-sentient toaster, absolutely. But then the other guy responds with, you do have a right. You have a right to work for me. And I'm like, okay, so you're both stupid.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the dialogue's terrible. Yeah. It's this sort of science fiction where it just doesn't actually explore the ideas it brings up and takes them to a logical conclusion, or not a conclusion necessarily, even just like a logical debate point. It wants to do the joke, right? They had the idea, robot gets offended and tries to like defend a toaster. That's what they did. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've watched go watch Battlestar Galactica. An offensive word for Cylon in that is toaster, right? They call them toasters, and it's like a degrading term, and it makes sense because they're saying, hey, you're just an appliance. That's all you are. You're no more than that. But that's obviously not the case, right? They are more than that. It's like calling a human, I don't know, like a
meat bag. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, oh, you dumb ape. Like, if I said that to you, like, it's demeaning because I'm saying you're less than human, or I'm saying
that's murder.
Right? That's effectively what it is. But I don't know. But it's just
yeah. And I get it.
And if it was just trying to be like a comedy, that'd be one thing. But it's not trying. I mean, obviously there's a lot of comedy in it because it has to be quippy. It has to have all these things. But its main goal is not to be a comedy. Its main goal is to be like an adventure, heartwarming film with action and stuff. That's the other thing is, like, you can't even just put it into one genre. Obviously it's science fiction and that's why we're doing it, but like, it's one of those movies where, oh, this is meant to appeal to everyone.
Yeah, it's not like it's not able to be kept in one genre because it's so genre defying, because it's so something new. It is everything so that it can apply to everyone.
Yes, it is. And a movie made for everyone's a movie made for no one.
Yep, absolutely. All right, back to where we were at in the movie. The mine collapses. They are now stuck on the robot side.
We're still so early.
Yep.
Okay,
and we get introduced to the robot evil side, because there's obviously evil humans, but the robot antagonists are a thing called scavs, aka scavengers, where they just honestly, kill robots and take apart them and use them for themselves.
You could just not mention this because it does not matter.
It
never comes up.
There's one bit later on, but not really.
It does not factor into the plot. It's basically there for some fake tension for a couple of scenes. It does not factor into anything whatsoever. Like, I assumed foolishly that when this was introduced, that maybe they'd become allies later on because they'd see like, oh, we have to fight, together or whatever.
No, I can tell you exactly why they were introduced, because it's in the original art. It is a major component of the original art. I saw them, and that's it. They had to be there.
Yeah. Establishes that Herm has multiple sizes, so like he jumps into like a bigger version of himself that's for bigger jobs, because he's a construction bot, right? So the idea is that there's like big jobs or small jobs, whatever. and he's got multiple sizes. So we see this one that's big enough to like pick up this minivan that's not got any fuel, but it can be carried.
Yeah, there's like a 2-foot size version of him. We're currently in a, I don't know, would you say 12-foot size, roundabout?
Maybe 12 to 15, something like that.
Yeah, and then we get one later on that's like a 30-foot, 40-foot one.
Yeah, really the big sort of almost kaiju sized. It's huge.
There is a kaiju robot in this. It's a giant like cat themed one, and it joins the fight for whatever reason.
Wasn't that Sonic? I thought that was Sonic.
No, it couldn't have been Sonic. It looked like a cat to me, but it definitely wasn't Sonic.
I think it was blue, and it had a kind of a smirk. It was making me think of Sonic.
Oh, yeah. No, it was Sonic coded for sure. It definitely would have that stuff, but it was definitely copyright free from Sonic.
Sure, that's fair. None of that $320 million could go to George Payne's Sega.
Nope.
Too busy paying... Well, no, they didn't pay Dr. Pepper. I'm sure Dr. Pepper paid a nice little healthy sum to be the clue in the plot for the main character.
I kind of want to go to the grocery store today and see if there's any Electric State branded Dr. Pepper.
Oh dear. So anyway, they go looking for the where the robots hang out. It's a mall that all the robot civilization's in. Mr. Peanut's running it like a little town.
Yep. Oh, we also got Chris Pratt's backstory of why he's working with the robot after being in the war, and apparently Herm saved his life as he was going to die, and then they both abandoned the army.
I don't care.
I'm just saying he does have a backstory. It's a shitty backstory, but he does.
He technically does. I think what gets me about Chris Pratt's character more than anything, honestly, is that by the end I feel like he didn't need to be there. Like he's constantly there to be in the action scenes, but it's not like he has a character arc, or he changes, or his bond with Michelle's important because he realizes that he cares about fighting again because of her plight or something like that. It's like if anything, it's Peanut that has that arc, or Giancarlo Esposito kind of has like a sort of little arc like that. But Chris Pratt has nothing. Chris Pratt just he's there to quip, be in the action scenes, and that's pretty much it. He's just kind of there to help her along the way. Oh yeah, no.
Again, looking through the original art pages here, I see a lot of Kid Cosmo. I see a lot of the sister. You know who I don't see? Chris Pratt and Herm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, they get to the town, and the robots are a little defensive, but for to just sort of skim through this part very quickly. Mr. Peanut's like, hey, you can't stay here. It's illegal for you to be in here. So, after you've spent the night, you leave. So he's not evil or anything, but he's like, you do have to leave, whatever.
He's looking out more so for his group of robots because they want to rebuild their own little society out here. They're trying to restart things. So when a human shows up, it's like, that's in violation of the treaty. Get out. And she tries to appeal to his quote-unquote humanity, and he says no. And she's like, you're just as bad as the rest of humans.
Yes, but part of this as well, though, is that when they're waiting till the morning to leave, because they found out that the scientist who was here left a letter or a note to go find him, they spend the night, and Cosmo Bot, the brother, opens up his little mouth hatch thing, and a projector's in there and starts projecting the cartoon that he's from onto the wall. And Millie Bobby Brown lies down next to him, and they watch it all heartfelt, and tears running down her eyes. And then lots of the robots start watching with her, and this inspires Peanut because he realizes that some humans are good, some humans have a heart. So he's going to help her go and find the scientist at some abandoned amusement park or whatever it is.
And a couple other robots join in. Like you said, there's a male lady one, there's a baseball one. They join in because why not?
Yeah, get a little ragtag group together. And they go find the scientist. This is where they do the whole... He's got defense mechanisms set up, and that's when Marky Mark plays. And
yeah, it's at a carnival as well, and I think that's just specifically to have a little bit of a creep factor of, oh no, look, it's a creepy rundown carnival, and all the scavenger robots are swarming around them. What are they going to do?
Yeah, but I mean... exposition dump, scientist explains what happened, Millie Bobby Brown's mad, but he explains, look, he was basically dead anyway, and technically he was only still alive because of this. However, the big thing that changed was that a couple of years into all this, after the war ended, her brother woke up. He actually like moved his hand and touched the scientist on the arm, and he was like, "Oh shit, he's alive! Like really alive. We have to like disconnect him and like give him his life back." And that made Stanley Tucci very upset. So Stanley Tucci chased him away, and cemented his villain status. And so, yeah, Scientist Man is sympathetic,
but Scientist Man also specifically left that little hole in the firewall and hoped that Christopher one day could find his way to get his consciousness out of there.
I actually didn't catch him saying that because I was so bored by the exposition. I was looking at my phone during this scene, but that's fair.
No, it was during the Stanley Tucci bit. It wasn't actually during this scene. It was during the Stanley Tucci bit. And they just say, like, there was a hole in the firewall, and Tucci just says the name of Quan's character, but we don't know him yet, so it means nothing.
Without looking, what was Quan's name?
Amherst.
You read that
only because I looked about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no way you remembered that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, we also get the introduction that Amherst has his own little robot that he made that is just a PC that he's imbued with his own voice and personality.
And has all of his memories that he's put into like a database.
Yep.
Which told me that he was about to die, because that's
absolutely
we're just going to have this robot have all of his knowledge. And sure enough, he does. Giancarlo Esposito's still hunting them inside here. He's been tracking them throughout the zone. He gets here, and he doesn't kill humans. That's the whole thing. Esposito's like a very by the book kind of guy.
Principled.
Yeah, he's like, hey, and Quan's like, hey, you'll have to kill me to get to them, and I don't think you kill humans. And he's like, I don't. And then out of nowhere, another droid behind him shoots at him, and it's Stanley Tucci's taking control of a droid, and is like, he broke the terms of the treaty. That was a justified kill. But this is obviously the moment where Giancarlo Esposito was starting to think, am I working for the bad guy?
Are we the baddies? So this is also the bit, and we get a direct line that says this later. I think one of the messages of this movie, one of the themes that it's trying to get across, is the absolute lack of difference between humans and robots. Like, that's the thing it's getting across, because at the end they say, after Giancarlo has his flip, it's I met a man who was more robot than a human, and he's talking about Stanley Tucci.
I think you sort of flipped that, but he says, I finally met a human who's less human than a robot. It was the sentiment was on point, but yeah, the phrasing is whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was. And then also add on to that fact that we have Christopher, who is running this entire data center, but he is also a human as well. He's able to do a robot's job better than a robot. So I think one of the themes we're trying to get across here is that this delineation, this line that you can draw between human and robot, is ultimately blurry as at best, and isn't something that can actually be made with any meaningful line.
I mean, it's not even really about robots. They're just a stand-in for segregation and literally in this case, like rounding people up and putting them in camps. Yeah. Before you deport them. I mean, or whatever.
Whatever it is that's going on in the world this week.
The last day or two. Yeah. Okay, so, right. They basically say, okay, he's in the main headquarters, which is in Seattle, I think they said. Not that it matters where it is, but it's a different place than this is. So we have to go on our quest to go do this. They get back to the mall. A lot of the robots are dead because the droids have been through here and killed a bunch of them. So they're all at their lowest. So they have the whole, this is the darkest moment before the third act where they have to have the little rah-rah speech.
Where Chris Pratt gets his hair cut so he can look like normal Chris Pratt for the third act.
Yes. And on the way back, of course, Cosmobot was grabbed by a droid, so it's now about going to save the brother in general. They don't even have the brother robot anymore. So it's like, hey, let's go and do this. And also, if we remove my brother from this thing, it'll take down their system and they won't be able to use the droids anymore. And you will be, the robots will have an advantage now. You'll be more free, right? Yeah.
But even then, we get PC and Quan explaining, like, if you take this down, it's going to take down all the VR headsets for everyone across the world. And that's going to mess up so many things. Are you sure that is worth it? And of course she says yes.
Well, it's not even that, though. Like he says, like, this is going to take down all the VR headsets, and she's like, even better. It's a win-win. Like, it's not just that she's willing to do it. It's that, no, I actively think that's a good idea. Let's do it.
She said, He tries to phrase it though. Like he tries like 3 different times. He's like, no, look, you don't understand. Like this is society is built around this now. It's going to cause major problems. She's like, yeah. And it's like, okay, you are 17 and clearly angry at the system. Please try to understand there are consequences.
No, but I think she's right in this case, bizarrely. I think the whole point is that we have to tear down the parts of society that don't work. Like, and I'm not complimenting the movie here. I think this is, again, as milquetoast as it gets as far as getting these ideas across. But, so anyway, they go to Seattle, they'll do a whole thing. There's a bigger version of Herm.
This is where Don't Stop Believin' kicks in.
Yes.
An instrumental, piano, orchestral one.
Yes.
And it's so, like, I can feel the movie being like, we know you're not going to be able to resist. You're going to feel that little flutter in your stomach that this is a good scene regardless of what's going on. And I was like, no, movie, because you've given nothing up to this point. Like, the musical choice is good, but not because it has anything to do with the movie.
So they storm the castle. Chris Pratt and Herm, giant Herm, storm the castle. The army of robots are behind them. And the whole idea is that this like gets their attention. All the droids get sent out to fight them, whilst maybe Millie Bobby Brown, the computer robot, sneak in and try and get to the brother. Which, what's so funny about this, though, when she gets to the brother and she has to, like, jack into the VR headset to talk to him inside the system, and she goes into, like, it's their family home, and this links up to one of the flashbacks we got earlier. There was a Christmas flashback at one point where he was home from Christmas from college, and she, like, came in home late, and she saw him on the couch, and she hugs him and said, oh my god, I missed you. And this was the scene where I really felt that, this sibling relationship is just too saccharine sweet, because all they do is say how much they love each other, how they want to stay with each other. She sort of like lies down with her head on his lap. It's like they are far too close. This is weird.
If you showed me this scene without the context of the rest of the movie and slapped the Brazzers logo in the corner, I'd be like, yep, that fits.
On it, yeah, like it's just too happy. It's too absurdly happy entirely. And again, the parents are just absent in the scene.
Because they have little throwaway lines about saying, like, once you left for college, mom and dad got even more yelling and even more angry. So obviously it's not a good home life, but we don't see that. We're just told it's happening.
And she's like, hey, don't quit college. And he's like, but my roommate calls me Doogie Howser and farts in my trash can.
Peas in his trash can.
Peas, sorry.
Yeah,
and then she threatens to pee in it, and I'm like, oh, this is really something from Pornhub now. That's
what I'm saying. Yes, the sequence is not okay.
Right? But anyway, so when she goes into the virtual reality to talk to him in the system, like he's sitting in that same room on the couch, and she talks to him, and it basically all boils down to, hey, you have to unhook me, but not only will it take down their system, it's also the only thing keeping me alive. And this refers back to a line earlier on when she was criticizing the doctor about hooking him up to this in the first place. He said, well, what would you have done? Would you have just pulled the plug? And she said, yes, I would have done if I had to. So the brother brings that up here and says, hey, you said you'd pull the plug. This is what's right. This is what I want. And she's like, no, there must be another way.
Yeah. I mean, she's really pushing of just like, no, we'll get your body out of here. We'll do all that. And he points out, no, I'm on life support. I ain't getting out of here. But the company can't last without me. And since I got to go out and see the world for the first time in that robot body, I see what the fruits of my labor have been, aka a bunch of phone-addicted crazy people. So, yeah, screw that. Tear down the establishment. Anarchy.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I saw the people wearing the headsets, and it's awful. I've ruined the world. Or they've used me to ruin the world at the very least. So I'm not going to be a part of that. You know, we have to end it. So this all sort of plays out while Stanley Tucci's taking control of a sort of bigger droid that's like killing robots. Herm seems to get killed. Well,
I want to jump in with the Stanley Tucci control thing. Were you as underwhelmed as I was? Because it was a slightly bigger military droid, but they keep on showing throughout this this movie these, I'm going to call them cell towers. They're essentially where the VR like comes from. They're just big monoliths in the middle of nowhere. I thought they were going to do a thing where these things can actually be like deployed as robots, as drones that can be controlled. And you have now this like kaiju-sized thing that Stanley Tucci is controlling, and it would be able to go up against our big Herm and the kaiju-sized cat robot. but instead it's just a slightly more muscular military droid.
Yeah. Yeah, I was underwhelmed, to answer your question. Yes.
All right, fair enough.
I'll give you. I don't know what I expected. I didn't have anything in mind really, but like when the whole thing like opened up and he rose out of the ground, I was like, oh, that's it. Just a slightly bigger one, but
It's like 2 feet taller. It's not even that much bigger.
yeah. And then the big thing here is because Giancarlo Esposito has learned about the boy, because when he delivered Cosmo to him and saw like who the brother was and realized that he'd hunted a child effectively, he clearly had second doubts about everything. So he goes out and tells Peanuts, hey, Stanley Tucci's on this floor. And he's like, why are you telling me this? Because I met a man who's less human than you are. And, then he like turns off his droid and Giancarlo Esposito's just done. That's him. He's finished. He's not going to fight, but he's just going to,
That was the end of his second day of filming.
Yes.
Kudos.
And that's basically it. The whole big thing is that they're all kind of in like dire straits. They're going like Chris Pratt's about to be killed just as the brother's unhooked, but that saves him because all the droids just kind of drop dead at that point.
Yeah, well, Herm jumps in. Herm intervenes from Chris Pratt being killed, but it involves fatally.
Well, yeah, that
wounding
happens
him.
first. Yeah. Like I said, Herm seemingly dies. Although they chicken out and reveal that there's a tiny little 8-inch Herm inside his head for the little jobs. There's a really tiny one. So he's alive.
Again, only after we get a partially improv scene of Chris Pratt crying over the body of Herm and saying things like, oh, I loved you possibly more than like a brother and all these things that we went through together. Oh, woo woo hoo. And then when little Herm pops out, he's just like, did you say love me more than just a brother? What are you talking about, man? He's like, nothing. Shut up.
And he makes a dick joke, everyone.
Yeah. I bet you would like to see the 8-inch member of Chris Pratt.
Dear. And the movie,
I love how that scene was directly across from the scene of Millie Bobby Brown having to disconnect the life support of her brother. That's real good pacing there.
Yeah, and the other thing to add really about all this stuff that was going on for the last like 15 minutes is just, there's a lot of endgame style. Oh, there's an army of robots and droids fighting each other, and we see the various robots using their different skills to try and fight the droids. It's a bunch of CG action gobbledygook. It didn't look particularly interesting. It wasn't particularly well choreographed, and I didn't really care much about what was going on. Right? Oh, the robot that plays the piano got blown up. Oh no, I'm so upset.
You like have not reached the peak that they were trying to do in the movie. Like they played that piano playing robot's death as an actual major like breaking point for some of the characters, and I'm like, guys, it was a taco playing the piano. You did not establish this as a heartfelt character.
Yeah, and then after it's all over, like the baseball one's like, yes, we won, but when someone wins, there's always someone who loses.
Which I really would have taken to heart if it wasn't for his lazy eye and crazy cartoonish makeup.
So the movie ends with Millie Bobby Brown recording a video to send out to the world, telling them that it's okay their VR headsets are gone because they all have to connect with each other because our particles all have to touch.
We didn't even mention that.
Because that reference to the opening scene with the brother where they're talking about how even when we're far apart, if you're on the moon, our particles will still find each other and intermingle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that sounds dirty. How are you making this sound dirty?
I mean, you're right. He's talking about quantum entanglement, how quantum particles, like if you mess with one of them, if there's a particle that's entangled with that particle, even if it's like across the universe, it also is affected, thus seemingly breaking the laws of like the speed of light and all that. It is an actual thing, but they're using it here for the power of love, which that part is not part of quantum entanglement.
I mean, it would be fine if it was a bit more nuanced, but it feels like someone opened a book, read like one paragraph and said, yep, that'll be our metaphor.
Yeah. Well, it felt to me like whoever was talking about it, whoever wrote the initial scene of it in that first instance, knew what they were talking about. But this is Millie Bobby Brown, who didn't understand a damn word of it, having to recount it in the way that she understood it. And it is ultimately like a copy of, particles of people feel each other and put down your phones.
Yes. And Stanley Tucci faces Mr. Peanuts in the eye and says, are you going to kill me now? And he's like, no, now we live. And I'm like, you know what? See if this wasn't like a corporate branded character, I might actually take some of this seriously, but it's just impossible to. So
that's where I'm getting like those Ready Player One vibes, where I'm like, yes, clearly it's all this stuff, except this is also just the commercial for Overwatch.
Yeah, the third act is definitely the most Ready Player One-esque of it, because it really felt like that, because it reminded me of the bad guy in Ready Player One being like, I'm going to be Mechagodzilla now and get into this fight. Like that's very much the same thing. So not a movie you want to remind me of, for the record.
No, definitely not.
Oh, and it's one we still have to do on this show as well. Oh god, that hurts.
Can I avoid it by saying that I technically already watched it and I'm willing to rate it now?
Unfortunately, no. The integrity of the show is too great. But so, and then they do the final thing, which is again stealing from other movies. I won't spoil what other movies it's stealing from, but they do a thing where at the end it looks like the Cosmobot has gotten back up. Somehow the brother's consciousness seems to have actually made its way to the robot, so he is still alive in some form. Yep. Cut to credits, directed by the Russos.
Wonderwall.
And Wonderwall's like a piano version of Wonderwall's playing during all this speech at the end. It's the most like, it's like there was I remember back in like 2015, 2016, Sony did their PlayStation conference at E3 back when that was a thing. And I remember it started with Imagine Dragons playing, and it was just like a really good example of like the mainstream of mainstream bands at the time being used to try and like perk something up because, hey, this is the thing that everyone likes. And this movie just feels like, here's a bunch of mainstream old jokes and references. Here's all these like songs that are popular that have been used too many times already. Here's the plot structure of Star Wars. Here's some corporate things you'll recognize from other stuff. I don't know. It's just everything about it just feels like it's just produced from an automated system.
Yeah. I've got it paused on my screen right now, and obviously Netflix gives like a little 1-sentence synopsis. An orphan teen hits the road with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother. Cool. That's an okay premise. They can still mess it up, but that at least it feels like it's a unique idea. Comma, teaming up with a smuggler and his wisecracking sidekick. And you lost me. There it is. You lost the idea of it could be anything but corporate.
Yep. I don't know. Honestly, it's just a depressing experience. Not because the movie itself is depressing, but in a meta context, it's just depressing because this is like the bottom of the barrel as far as movies go right now. This is just the sad state of generic big budget crap that has very little merit. It's just hollow and
I think the most depressing point for me, like, I'd be fine if this were something that cost $50 million. If this were something that were just, contractually obligated, we just got to make this movie, whatever. But this is something that, has been in production more or less for a good 5 to 8 years now. Pretty much since the book was made, it was already in talks for a film adaptation. It's one of the most expensive movies ever made with a $320 million budget. And this is all we get out of it.
Joe, the funny thing is, though, see if it was a $50 million budget, it would probably be a better movie. Not because it would help the effects or anything like that, but because the people making it probably would be really passionate about it, and it would be like this little movie that's trying to punch above its weight. There'd probably be a lot more artistic passion in it, but because it costs so much, it's so bland and safe at every possible turn, and has no... there's not a single shred of atmosphere in this movie. No personality, no atmosphere. And if there's one thing I think of when I look at this artist's work, when I see his paintings, is atmosphere. It's oozing atmosphere. And this has none.
That's exactly the critique I gave to Megalopolis, is the idea that it had so much money, it didn't know what to do with it, and it just made whatever it wanted to do. But this is like the opposite side of that, where instead of it being an auteur, quote unquote, who has too much money and therefore goes too deep on his vision, this is studios having too much money and therefore they need to be able to make that money back, and therefore it must appeal to everyone.
But I will take the crazy auteur version over this, because at least the crazy auteur is someone making decisions and doing crazy things. As stupid as it might be, it's more interesting than this.
Absolutely. I really want to know, like, Chris Pratt, I'm assuming he just signs on to everything. And honestly, at this point, I'm starting to get that vibe from Giancarlo Esposito as well. It seems like he just signs on to whatever project he wants.
I'm not going to begrudge the actors from getting an easy payday, right?
No. I just want to know what they saw in it. Like, is this something where they saw any sort of positivity to it going into it, or did they just go in for the paycheck?
I mean, yeah, like I'm sure they'll do a project that's because they love being an actor and they love their art, and that'll pay next to nothing, and they'll accept that because they really care about the project. And then they do this and get paid 50 times more for it just for showing up for a few days.
Yeah,
and that pays for the house payments for the rest of their life.
Isn't that the Michael Caine quote? Why'd you do Jaws 4? To pay for my house?
No, the actual quote is, did you see Jaws 4? And he said, no, but I saw the house that it paid for.
There it is. Yep. That's it.
So, yeah, I can't begrudge anything. And it's just soulless. That's all I have to say, really. So I think we can get on to our wrapping up here. So,
right.
what was your or scene of the movie? But it's scene of the movie.
That's impossible. I mean, there were a couple sequences that I found less abhorrent than other ones. Honestly, it was mostly in the first half, or honestly, I should say third, where I still felt like there could be some level of promise, but it very quickly died out. I think if I had to pick any one sequence, it's gonna be the news flashback sequence. It's gonna be the going back and saying, how did we get here? Because I think that there are a bunch of cool visuals in that do come right out of those books, or at least that kind of style of like these robot armies just marching down the street. You get to see the soldiers fighting and dying against them. What it reminded me a lot of was the Animatrix. Did you ever watch that?
No.
There's a bunch of animated shorts that were made to tie in with the Matrix series, and it was a two-parter that was basically the rise of the robots. Like, how did we get here? And it's very much in that same vein, but that's done incredibly artistically well done. This is like a D- in comparison, but at least it's something. It's something that felt interesting in this world compared to everything else we were shown.
Yeah. When it cut to credits, I was relieved.
But Wonderwall, though.
I mean, it's not a bad song. It's overused, but
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to pick something, I guess the most excited I ever got was when, hey, it's Costanza, which isn't really a compliment to the movie, but it's the most excited I got the whole time. So
Yeah. All right.
I guess I'll go with that. It's not saying much.
Nah.
Good luck with this. MVP.
I don't know. I genuinely, even if I'm looking at people behind the camera, I do not have a place to start. Like, it is all not good. And I would love to say the artist. I would love to say the original author / artist that set up this world, but that's not present in this movie. I can't say that if it's not here. So I'm literally left with no good choices.
I mean, he's more important than anyone in the movie.
He is. If you're going valuable in terms of, this movie wouldn't exist without him, correct?
Well, no, but I just mean as an artist, he's more important than anything going on in this movie. But obviously, I'm not saying you should give it to him for that. I'm just saying give him credit where credit is due, but not for this movie.
Yeah, no. I was thinking for a while Stanley Tucci, just because he's chewing the scenery. Like, at least he's having fun as a villain, but ultimately he kind of let me down as well. I really don't have any good choices here. I think I'm going to go with Stanley Tucci, but he didn't do anything to deserve it. Like, it's just that everyone else failed a little bit more. That's my entire backing behind it.
Yes, tough. Rahul Kohli was in a scene. Didn't mention him. It was a nothing character. He's literally just works for the bad guy and explains something to him for one scene, and then he never comes back. Brian Cox voiced a robot. We didn't mention that earlier. I'm literally just looking down the list to see if anyone sticks out that I want to...
Brian Cox was the baseball one.
Oh, was he? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Alan Tudyk was Cosmo, so all he had to, like, he recorded like 7 lines and they just looped them.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah, it's not easy. I know. I know.
I mean, who do I pick? I really don't know. No one was good. I will go.
This is how we get over 2 hours, guys.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to pick. There's no. Okay.
All right.
I will simply go with Giancarlo Esposito.
Okay.
Just because he at least had some presence.
All right.
You know, that's it. That's all I've got. I have nothing else to give it for. So
yeah, it would have been between Tucci or Esposito for me. I thought Esposito was a much more one-note character that didn't have at least fun with the role.
At least I could see what the good version of his character was, whereas Tucci, I feel like he's... Oh, yeah. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Visuals.
All right. So, do you want to bounce back and forth real quick on this?
Yeah, we'll bounce, I think.
All right. So, visuals for me, every once in a while, there's something lifted directly from the paintings. There's something lifted directly from the artistic vision of that. I think those moments are okay. But collectively, like the CGI of the robots always looked just a little bit fake. I don't think there was anything that felt like it was really grounded in the world and felt like it was there. Again, I'm thinking back to The Creator, where it felt like all of that stuff was there. It did a very good job of that. This always had a cheapness to it. I will say that I don't think that there is any moment in here where it felt like it was just an absolute failing on the visuals. It just felt average at best, which it shouldn't when it costs $320 million. So I think for visuals, I would still say it's like a 5. Like it's okay, but when the entire movie is hanging on it, that's not good enough.
Yeah, no, I was thinking 5 out of 10 for visuals, because it just, from a cinematography point of view, there's nothing interesting happening. Despite all the artwork they've got to work from, it still just looks like a bland Netflix movie for most of the time. There's just that same clean look, no personality to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've already talked about the CG, so 5 out of 10. It's just, you know, I can't go below that necessarily, because it's serviceable, but it's not. Right. There's no art to it either, so it can't go above a 5 either. So there you go. Audio.
I mean, I enjoy the songs from the soundtrack. I think they're fine. I did see that the score, I'd never heard it, but apparently it was done by Alan Silvestri. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that was there.
Yeah, who also did some of the Avengers movies. And did you notice a robot was reading an Avengers comic in this? Did you notice that? I did.
It's almost like this movie's just saying, hey, everyone, remember we did the things you like? Please check out our movie.
Yeah, we forgot we made this already because we're already making the next Avengers movie.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, it's nothing awful. I don't think there was any moments of sound that, like, were bad, but nothing stood out either as being, like, a very interesting motif or anything like that. So I'd say just because I like the soundtrack, I'll bump that up to a 6, but no higher.
Yeah, it's... it's kind of similar to, like, to be honest, I found a lot of the robot voices a little bit kind of...
Oh, yeah, I wasn't really considering that.
Yeah, just kind of by the numbers. It felt like, again, we're just sort of playing on the tropes of, like, quirky robot voices. We got some guest actors to come in and do some lines, and that's basically that. I do... I think I kind of agree with the 6, maybe a 5.5 if I want to be a bit harsher. Just because, again, there's nothing really special about it, and the song choices are uninspired. Even if they're not actively bad, the choices made are dull. So I'm going to go 5.5 on audio.
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, the song choices, they are made based off of the lyrics. Like, it's not about how the song feels or anything like that. It's, oh, we're going to war, don't stop believing. Oh, what's that? Oh, he might have lived in the end. Well, maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. Like, they only pick it because of that.
Yeah. All right.
Acting. Nobody's given anything to do. So I don't really think it's mostly the actor's fault, but that being said, they don't try. Like, I think they came into this, they read the script and they're like, oh, okay, this is going to be something that's forgotten in about 3 weeks. Like, this is, as soon as it makes it off of Netflix's front page, will never be watched again. So, again, I don't think I can go very high at all. I think ultimately they're not doing anything, so it deserves 5.5. I'll say they aren't awful. Nobody delivers a bad performance, but none of them are good.
Yeah, I'd just go straight 5 again on this, because it's again, a lot of these people are talented. I could even go a little bit lower if I wanted to be really harsh about just being sick of Chris Pratt's shtick.
Yeah,
but like they're not necessarily doing anything bad, but there's just nothing there to work with. There's nothing to show that the characters have any weight to them by giving them things to actually perform. And what moments they do try and give of emotion are completely held back by just an unbelievable story or their character relationships that are set up. I mean, the brother and sister thing, every time they tried to pull on the heartstrings, it just felt phony. Now, admittedly, I'm going to judge the script more harshly for that than I am the acting, but that does sort of bleed into the acting a little bit, because it means that even when they're attempting to be sweet or emotional, it just kind of falls flat. So
yeah,
I will go straight 5 out of 10 on acting as well.
all right. Script. Oh no. Yeah, no, this is so unbelievably by the numbers, bare bones. How much can we just appeal to everybody without actually saying anything? I got nothing out of this in any emotional response at all. So I think 1.5.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, no, it's like the 1.5 is because like it makes sense scene to scene, beat to beat. I understand everything, but at this point, if you're going to sink over $300 million into something, you need to have something happen, anything happen that is not just the most, our market group said that this sells well, so we're just going to do this for the 18th time this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's trite. It just feels like a repackaged, reheated assortment of things from other movies. Like, parts of it just flat out completely fall flat, like the brother-sister relationship, which is supposed to be this sweet thing that's the entire motivator for the movie, but it feels unrealistic. It does not feel like it resonates. And
Plus, we're going to get all these comments about, like, oh, I act exactly like this to my sibling. Maybe you're just an unloving person.
I'm an only child, so I mean, I can.
I've got 2 siblings, and I never talk to them, so whatever.
So the script and everything about it is just so uninspired, and it does function fine. Like, it does set up motivations, it sets some things up that it pays off, but they're all kind of like so by the numbers that there's very little to feel for any of it. You just, like, instead of going, oh hey, that feels satisfying because they paid that thing off, you're going, oh gee, they did that thing that they brought up earlier. Oh, they talked about she'd be willing to pull the plug, and at the end she's, oh, I have to pull the plug? No, that's hard. Like, oh, I'm so sure. Again, every single time it mentioned something like that, I knew instantly, well, this is, oh, this robot's got all his memories, well, he's about to die. Oh, she's not willing to pull the plug, well, she's going to have to make that choice. Like, it's just constantly, there's just without
predictability.
Yes, but not good, because predictability inherently is not bad. In fact, some of the best stories are good because they set things up properly, so they should, in theory, be able to be predicted by just about anyone if you're, like, putting the connections together.
Right.
But this is yeah, I do think 1.5 feels like that's like, written in crayon levels of bad. So I'm going to go 3 out of 10.
All right, fair enough. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was written in crayon, though. All right, and then the final is the production value. Again, there's $300 million floating around this movie. God only knows where. I'm assuming Chris Pratt's pockets and Millie Bobby Brown's pockets, because that is the only place I could see it really going. It is, again, concept-wise, if you take the Electric State book and say, we want to make a movie off this, from what I've seen of that, works. It is good. It is fine. Do that. But it's just not here. That's not what this movie is. This is the movie they were always going to make, branded with the Electric State aesthetic. And the aesthetic is very loosely used here. So when it comes down to production values, it feels like a Netflix original. And I think that speaks for itself. So as much as it feels like there's money in it, I think it can't get above like a 4 for me, just because it feels like it's all squandered.
Yeah, this is the thing, is you're watching a movie like this, you're like, okay, this is absurdly expensive, but production value, when we're rating it here, is not about how much money they spent. It's about how much money it feels like we can see on the screen. How does it feel like it's hitting like those levels that where it feels like a big movie, and it doesn't have to be expensive to do that. It could, like a low budget movie can feel like it has great production value. So it's about using what you've got wisely, and this is the opposite of that. This is where, like, because like you say, where did this money go? Or like where is it? Because I guess just having all these CG characters all the time racks up a cost. But
yeah,
I was not excited to see them on screen. So that wasn't there. It feels like a lot of the locations aren't that interesting, right? So much of it seems to be designed around what can we do on a soundstage or with green screens. We're not going to go out and shoot in real locations, so everything looks flat, because when they shoot in a green screen, they have to shoot everything with very flat lighting so they can manipulate it later easier. But that means that there's less dramatic choices made with lighting. So it means, something as simple as like, oh, we're going to do like a moody part of the scene here because this fits the moment in the character, so we're going to have like half the face in shadow. All of a sudden, if you're shooting everything in green screen, you stop doing that because you want everything to be able to be tinkered with later, and you can't tinker with something if you do like dramatic intentional lighting choices in camera. So yeah, I'm tempted to just say 5 again, because it's like the mundane down the middle. It's got a lot of money, but I just don't feel any spark from any of it. There's no magic here. It's through the factory pipeline, and that's all it is. So I'll say 5, but
okay,
it's it's not enthusiastic. Not that a 5 ever would be, but all right. What are you rating the Electric State?
I mean, it's just if rating is based off of like technical competence mixed together with a bit of how much I enjoyed it, it's both sides not good. It's not a solid movie. This is absolutely content. This is absolutely something that was made for the sake of we need to fill out a library a little bit. I don't think that it's broaching the 5 even. Like, it's so annoyingly bland and by the numbers that I think I'd have to dip it down. I'm gonna say a 3.5. It's almost to a 4, but I think that there's just this little extra something in me that I do not hate Chris Pratt, but I hate what Chris Pratt represents. And that's what gets it that extra half point off.
I don't hate Chris Pratt, but I hate what he's become. Like, yes. I've been rewatching Parks and Rec, and like that show's great, and he's very good in it, right? But goddamn, like it feels like nothing matters anymore with him. Yeah, I'm thinking 3 out of 10. I was even tempted, like, I almost want to go lower, just because even though it's not objectively terrible, right? But it's so aggressively bland and mundane. And just, I feel nothing for it. And the more I see movies that feel like this, the more anger I have for them. Where I guess technically is me feeling something, but I'm not feeling something for the movie. I'm feeling something for the state of having my time wasted. Like, and the more it happens, the more irate I get about it. And that's why when we did Atlas last year, I said, do we even do Netflix movies anymore? Because it's just a goddamn waste of time. And would you believe it? After watching this, I still feel like it was a goddamn waste of time.
Oh, man. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me for the 800th time.
But I was like, no, we're going to do more new releases. If Netflix put out a movie or something, or another service does, we should do it. And I just, like, I've been let down. And, like, there's a movie we've got in the schedule in a couple of months' time that came out recently on Apple called The Gorge. And I think it's meant to be better than this, but it's not like I'm seeing rave reviews either. And I'm just like, are any streaming services, like, movies, like, ever going to be worth the goddamn? I really don't know. Like,
honestly, I feel like we've reached, like, streaming services when they were first coming out felt like this idea of, oh, you can get your little indie films out there. You can allow people to see these smaller ideas that wouldn't get theater releases otherwise. But now we've reached a point where all of those people who know they have a creative idea, who know they have something special, know that putting it on streaming is a death sentence. And so they aren't doing it.
Yeah, there's a couple of exceptions, and a few of the big exceptions are just because they were supposed to be theater releases, but the pandemic kind of changed what happened to them. So the actual list of good straight-to-streaming movies is very, very, very short. Like, you know, I'm never going to lose hope that it can happen occasionally, but goddamn, I mean, the Russo brothers Chris Pratt movie was never going to be the one that broke the trend, I don't think.
No, probably not. So was this a 3 or a 3.5?
Oh, 3 out of 10 for me.
3? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's it. I got some homework to do, but I know you like your little sign-off first.
Oh, yeah, just to promote the Patreon and thank everyone for watching. But yeah, David's got his homework movie in a minute. And I know what he chose for it, which is really funny. So, if you want to support the show and help keep it coming and help keep Collector's Cut coming, the other show that we do where we go through franchises and actor filmographies and things like that, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. There's bonuses for various things there, but 2 of the bonuses you can get from me and David are 2 monthly shows. One is where we do Criterion Collection movies, and the other, called Extra Reels, is where we do some of the worst things ever made. Although they're far more interesting usually than this movie was.
Yes, that's true.
You know, say what you will about some of Neil Breen's films, but I'm always yelling and questioning things and like try to like figure out the whims of a madman. So
that is content. If this is content made for everybody, that's content made for exactly like 4 people.
No, it's made for one man. It's made for Neil Breen.
Yeah, that's true.
It's made for the person making it. And that's more interesting in a lot of ways. So, hey, all right, David, why don't you tell us about another 2-hour plus Chris Pratt movie that you watched? Sure,
Pete. So, yeah, I had to let Pete in on this just because I was suffering, and so I had to let him know what was going on. It was too good of a lineup not to do it for the sake of the bit. I watched Electric State, and then I went almost immediately into The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt as Chris Pratt, but slightly more leading man than comedian.
You sad son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, it was a bad choice, Pete. I made bad decisions today. So, all right, to lead off with, I didn't know what Tomorrow War was going into it. I knew that it was about aliens and a future thing and some amount of time travel, but that's about all I got. It's a climate message. It is a global warming message to the nth degree, where it's a, hey, there's this calamity going to be happening a couple decades from now, and we need help from the present to stop it. So it's absolutely a global warming message. And on that front, it was okay. I think it was an interesting enough way to turn it around.
I don't remember what my complaint was, but I seem to remember when me and Tara did this, we had some like big logic holes with the third act. There was something that really bothered us about, like it messed up with the message or something, but I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, no, because I mean, spoilers for that movie, but spoilers, don't watch it.
Yeah.
The third act, they've got this whole thing where the future figures out how to take out these aliens, which are to represent global warming. They're the threat. And then it gets sent back to the past so they can mass produce it. But then in the third act, it turns out that that doesn't actually matter. And they needed to go find where the aliens were chilling out on Earth the whole time. They were frozen in ice, and it was the ice caps melting that caused the problem. And whereas up to this point, the aliens are supposed to represent global warming, now it's just a thing that they can explode. And that's where the logical message falls apart is, oh, we can just blow up global warming. Like, it's not it's not something of a, oh, we all have to work together and do this thing. It's a, no, we just need like 5 people to go up to Russia and blow up the ice caps. That'll help. Yeah. So yeah, it really falls apart towards the end. And honestly, I think even the conceit of it, you've got this interesting idea of there's a war going on in the future that conscripts people from the past to fight in it. That's an interesting concept. But ultimately what it comes down to is you have half the movie taking place in this future where they say you're going to be there for a week. Ultimately, we only see about 2 days worth of time. One's an action scene. The other is the lab research scene. And then it's coming back to the present. And everything they did in the future doesn't actually matter to the plot. So the entire conceit is flawed from the word go because it doesn't matter to getting to the third act. There's also some stuff about, fatherhood and caring about your children. Again, loosely tying into the global warming aspect of it. But yeah, it's just a mess.
Yeah, I think that's ringing a bell. The feeling that nothing they did in the future actually mattered, I think that's ringing a bell for my complaints. But I mean, again, I don't remember most of it. So,
yeah. And again, this is just a time travel problem I have fairly frequently, is that they have the characters understanding how time travel works, and yet they don't have the understanding of, if you let a character die in a future where that timeline's never going to happen, they're never going to die because that timeline never happened. And yet for some reason, these characters put everything they have into saving these future characters that hopefully will never exist. So whatever. Point being, it's an annoyingly long movie as well. I think that it could have made its point about 40 minutes quicker, but they had to show off the monsters, which were an okay design, but didn't feel like anything too amazing. I'd say it's like, I'm going to say compared to Electric State, I liked it just a little bit more because at least it felt like something was happening. So I'm going to give it a 4, but it's still under the 5 for sure.
They're developing a sequel.
The Day After Tomorrow War? Like, what are we looking at here?
I don't know. Maybe it'll fall through and not happen, but
I hope so.
The developing
Look,
sequel.
Again, I don't hate Chris Pratt, but I'm okay with anything he's attached to just kind of slowly dying off for a while.
Weird. All right, that's the show, everyone. This has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I had to think about the show we were on there. And that, unfortunately, was The Electric State. It's not very good. Nope. Do not recommend.
Nope. No new episode next week. We got a week off.
Oh, is that right? I wasn't even looking at the schedule there, but good point. We'll be back, though, the week after our break week with Frequency, which was a Patreon vote winner. So we're doing the year 2000 movie, Frequency.
It's 90s, though.
It feels pretty 90s. But yeah, so that's what's coming next on the show. So we'll see you for that in 2 weeks. But let us know what you thought of this movie in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. All the usual YouTube things you say. But that is us. So thank you once again for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching Science Fiction and Computer at Salsa.